Of the first wave of Americans who hit Omaha Beach, 90% were killed or wounded in 30 minutes. June 6, 1944, 6:30 a.m. The ramps dropped on the Higgins boats, and American soldiers stepped into hell. The plan seemed simple on paper: land on Omaha Beach, secure the cliffs, push inland. But the moment those metal ramps splashed into the cold waters of Normandy, every assumption the Allied command had made crumbled into chaos and blood. The soldiers of the 1st and 29th Infantry Divisions weren't supposed to face entrenched resistance. Intelligence reports had assured them that the pre-invasion naval bombardment would soften German defenses. The heavy bombers had dropped thousands of tons of explosives. The warships had pounded the coastline for hours. The beach should have been cleared. It wasn't. The Germans were waiting. Dug deep into reinforced concrete bunkers and hidden pillboxes carved into the cliffs, they had survived the bombardment. Machine gun nests overlooked every inch of beach. Artillery pieces were pre-sighted on the killing zones. Mortars were ranged perfectly. The defenders had turned Omaha Beach into a carefully designed death trap, and the Americans were walking straight into it. The boats couldn't get close enough. Underwater obstacles and heavy surf forced the coxswains to drop the ramps early, sometimes in water that was chest deep, sometimes over the heads of the shorter men. Soldiers laden with 60 to 80 pounds of equipment, ammunition, rations, explosives, radios, stepped off into the surf and immediately went under. Some never surfaced. They drowned within sight of the beach they were supposed to liberate, pulled down by the weight of their own gear, their final moments spent struggling in the dark water beneath the waves. Those who made it to the surface faced a different nightmare. The water erupted around them as German machine guns opened fire. MG-42s, capable of firing 1,200 rounds per minute, created walls of lead that turned the surf red. Men were cut down before they took 3 steps. Bodies floated in the tide. The wounded screamed for medics who couldn't reach them, and still they pushed forward, because there was nowhere else to go. The few who reached the beach found no cover, no protection. The naval bombardment had failed to destroy the obstacles and fortifications. Wooden stakes, metal hedgehogs, and Belgian gates designed to tear apart landing craft still stood intact. The shingle, a steep bank of fist-sized stones, offered the only shelter, but it was 200 yards away across open sand. 200 yards of flat beach with no cover, every inch covered by overlapping fields of fire. Engineers trying to clear paths through the obstacles were priority targets. Bangalore torpedoes meant to blast gaps in the wire became coffins for the men carrying them. Flamethrower operators were shot on sight, their fuel tanks exploding and turning them into human torches. Tank support that was supposed to provide covering fire never arrived. Most of the D.D. Sherman tanks had sunk in the rough seas before reaching shore. Officers and NCOs fell in the first minutes. Lieutenants fresh out of West Point died leading charges they'd practiced 100 times but never imagined would end like this. Sergeants who'd survived North Africa and Sicily were cut down organizing their men. Without leadership, soldiers clustered behind the obstacles, pinned down, watching their friends die around them. But something remarkable happened in that hell. Men who had never led before took charge. Private soldiers became squad leaders. Wounded men refused evacuation and kept fighting. Engineers cleared mines while under direct fire. Medics ran into machine gun fire to drag wounded men to safety, many dying in the attempt. Slowly, in small groups, they moved forward, not in organized waves like the plan called for, but in desperate individual acts of courage. A soldier would sprint 10 yards and dive behind a tank obstacle. Another would follow, then another. Inch by bloody inch, they crossed that killing field. Bangalore torpedoes finally punched holes in the wire. Small teams used whatever cover they could find, dead tanks, debris, even the bodies of their fallen brothers, to work their way up the bluffs. Rangers scaled the cliffs using ropes and grappling hooks while machine gun fire cut through their ranks. They climbed over their own dead to reach the German positions. By mid-morning, small groups had reached the seawall and the base of the bluffs. By early afternoon, they'd begun clearing the pillboxes and bunkers. By nightfall, they'd secured a toehold barely a mile deep, nowhere near the objectives planned for D-Day, but enough. Enough to keep the beachhead open. Enough to let the follow-up waves land. Enough to change the course of the war. The cost was staggering. Of the roughly 2,400 men in the first wave, over 2,000 were casualties within the first 30 minutes. Company A of the 116th Infantry landed with 200 men. 30 minutes later, only 18 were still able to fight. Some companies were completely wiped out, every single man killed or wounded. The beach was carpeted with the dead and dying. Medics worked through the day and into the night, triaging the wounded, knowing they couldn't save everyone. The surf continued to bring bodies ashore for days afterward. Dog tags were collected. Letters were written to mothers and wives who would never see their sons and husbands again. But Omaha Beach was taken. The Germans couldn't push the Americans back into the sea. The toehold became a foothold. The foothold became a breakthrough. And from that blood-soaked beach, the liberation of Europe began. The men who survived Omaha Beach never forgot what they'd seen. Many never spoke of it. How could they explain to those who weren't there what it meant to watch your best friend disappear beneath the waves, to step over the bodies of men you'd trained with for months, to keep moving forward when everything in your body screamed to stop, to hide, to survive? They did it anyway, not because they were fearless, they were terrified. Not because they didn't understand the cost. They saw it all around them. They did it because the men beside them were doing it, because turning back meant their friends had died for nothing, because somewhere beyond that beach, beyond those cliffs, freedom was worth fighting for. Remember to thank a veteran today. They gave everything so you don't have to.